Morning. How was the walk? Oh, yeah.
Also, John is the teacher at basketball. He's a firefighter. He also used to work the Grand Canyon. He worked all the western parks. He comes when the cold weather comes to here. So you should get him. Okay. Very good. It's very good. He talks all about nature and all the intricacies.
Wow.
It's worth taking a class. Where is it? The Clyde Butcher's gallery in the middle of the Big Cypress Swamp, which is west of Everglades. It's an hour and a quarter from here, directly. Worth it. Oh yeah. They charge $50 for adults in a normal tour, but for kids, they charge everybody $25, and the chaperones go free. So it's worth going with a class or with a big family. Go in an airboat? No, you get in the water. You walk up to your waist. He walks you around a certain path. And if there are a lot of little kids, he goes on a different path where it's less steep. Now the water is for dry season. It's supposed to be dry. But it's up to your knees because there's a lot of rains.
Well, yeah. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Not cold either.
Today we're going to start.
We'll come back to Arizona.
It's a new chapter. We've been introduced to the concept before. It's a new chapter. It's on 93b. Thank Hashem that you're able to enter every day in the schus of learning. We should have immediately learning in memory of Zahava Golda, and we should do well. Father should say. We start someone steals wood. Basim Kalim, the thief turned it into utensils. So he did some cutting and sanding, and he turned it into a vessel. Now we're going to see in the Gemara that's maybe not exactly the way I'm describing it, but he made it into a vessel. Samer, he took wool, Basim Begadim, and he turned it into clothing. So because he made the change in the item, so the thief acquires the item, and his obligation to the original owner is just a monetary obligation, not the item itself. He has to pay for the item as it was because he made the change in it. So he doesn't just give it back change. He doesn't give just back that item. He has to pay for what it was originally worth at the time that he stole it. It's going to come out as that the thief may end up making money off this. That's a possibility. He also may end up losing, but he may end up making. Let's say he stole a cow that was pregnant, and then the cow gave birth. So that's a significant change in the cow. Rachel to Una Vigasa, or there was a sheep that was loaded with its hair, with its wool, and he shared the wool. I tell my students the way to remember that Goizes used to share because that's the sound that the machine makes when they do it. The haircut machine. It's Goizes. So he takes the wool. Mishalim the he has to pay for what it was worth originally when he took it, which was a cow that was pregnant, ready to give birth. The Meirachla Mendes the Gazis. He also has to pay for the sheep. He has to pay for a sheep that's full of the hair. The wool is still on it. In this case, he's probably going to end up making money because two cows, a mother and a baby cow and a calf, are probably worth more than one cow than one pregnant cow. So he only has to pay what it was originally. And the same is with the wool. The sheep with the wool on it is probably not worth as much as sheep plus wool. That's probably worth more. So he's probably going to end up making money. But whatever the case is, that's fine. He has to pay what it was when he took it. interesting that he doesn't have to pay what the person would have had it, the original owner would have had more money, but he doesn't have to pay that. Also part of it, yeah.
Like the prices of things is like so well established. Like even in the United States today, like you get an operation in Virginia, it costs 50 times what it would cost in a different state. Like things change so much.
Right.
How is it so well established? Like how much things cost?
It would be in that place. They didn't have the same complications, but it would be in that place what its value was right there on the market.
And so they would go to the market, something like that.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah. What is the cost of the market?
Okay.
Stolen, it says. When it comes to court, they would estimate what it was at the time when it was stolen. That's what it seems. Okay. Yeah, they had a free market back then.
It makes sense. You as the owner
would have
that all these profits are coming
right
without doing anything.
Right. It has to do with
If somebody is entitled, it's okay for them to do your profits.
Yeah. Time's asking a good question. I think the answer is, let me repeat the question. Question is that it comes out that someone's like almost entitled to take your profits. If someone steals, he ends up keeping the profits that the original owner would have had at this by this time. But I think it has to do with the kind of sashavim. I think that we don't want to when someone's trying to do tshuva, we try to lessen the burden on him so that it should be more. We'll see other examples of that. But that may be part of it.
And it got burned, which were almost ready.
There was a discussion about the fruits that were almost ready. Shimon held that you have to pay the full fruits instead of the field. Usually, you say the other people said that they always just pay as it's part of the field. He said the fruits were almost ready. Yeah, that was the damage. That was okay. The next case is interesting because it's also part of an Esabre Etzle Bielda. He stole a cow that was not pregnant, but it became pregnant by him, and then it gave birth. So it's basically back to the same as it was when he stole it. So sound like maybe just give the cow back. Rachel v'nitzana etzlai begaza. Let's say he stole a sheep and it grew hair by him, the wool, and then he sheared it off. So now it's back to where it started. But nevertheless, Mishalim Kishasa Gzela doesn't actually give the animal back because of the change, it just pays its value. This is the real Kol Gazlan Mishalim Kishasa Gzela. All thieves pay for at the value that it was at the time of stealing. Okay. Umar now says, Amri, if you take a look at the Mishnah, we said Eitzim v'asam kalim. If a person stole wood and he turned it into utensils, so then we say that that's considered a significant change in the item, and the thief acquires it, and he doesn't have to give the item back. He only has to pay what it was. Shifan, but let's say he just sanded it down, then light. You see, he made it into a piece of wood. In order to make it into a vessel, you have to sand it. There's a process to it. But we went from wood to vessel, and we skipped sanding it, which is part of the process. So it looks like until you finish the process, you don't really acquire it. The things along the way, sanding it down, that's insignificant. It's still considered a piece of wood. If you sand it, then you don't acquire it. And then we also had a big jump when it came to the wool, turning it into clothing. That's considered a significant change. But Libanon, if you just wash the wool is filthy. You have to wash it, which is part of the process. So then you don't acquire. It's not significant. Problem is for a mini, but I have a contradiction to this because I have a brisa that says someone steals wood and he sands it up on his son, or he steals stones and he chisels them down to make them smooth. wool and he washed it. Pishtan v'nakeo, flax, and he cleaned it out. So what's going to be the din? Mishal Shas Exeli has to pay its value what it was originally, which means that he acquires it. The Brisa seems to contradict the diuk of the Mishnah. The Brisa contradicts the implication of the Mishnah. Not what the Mishnah says, what the Mishnah implies. Amar Abaya says, Tana di dan katani shine de rabbanan de hadra, kolshkin shine de raisa. Abaya says we're looking at it wrong. Abaya says that it's exactly the opposite. When the Mishnah says the person stole wood and he turned it into vessels, that's because all he did was take these pieces of wood, like Lego pieces, and he put them together. He didn't make any changes in the wood. There was a guy in Bell Harbor. He was a carpenter. Before the war, he was a carpenter. He was labeled Goldshire. An old man. He was already married by the Holocaust. But anyway, he told me, he says, before the war, he says he could build a whole house with 1 pound of nails. So the way they cut the wood, they had everything fit in. He says they came to America. He says the banging nails, just banging the nails. Over there, it was like a whole skill. Everything was put into place before the nail went in. So So what's going on over here is that the wood could be that it's totally prepared already. He stole wood that's already prepared to turn it into utensils. So he didn't really make a change. He just put it together. So, and nevertheless, let's see how he spells it out. The wood was already sanded. We already had boards. That's a type of change that could go back to the way it was originally. Just take it apart. However, you just take it apart. The same thing as with the wool. We're talking about where the wool was already spun. And then what do you do with that? Like the knitting. You pull out one string, everything comes up, but you're back where you started. So the Shina our Mishnah holds that if a Shina the Hadar, a change in an item that you could revert back to its original state is considered a Shina, is considered a change. For sure, if you actually make a change in the item itself by sanding it or by spinning the wool, that would be a real change. We were thinking that only if you make it into utensils, that's when it's going to be a change. But if you just sand it down, then it's not going to be. It's the opposite. Sanding it down is for sure a change. We're saying that even if it was already sanded when the person stole it, all he did was just put it together, which then you could take apart, but that's still considered a change. Now, Tosfos points out that it's a change only together with the name changed together with it. It's called wood, and now it's called something else. So that's going to be considered a change. If it was called wood and now it's still called wood, and you didn't really do much, so that's not going to even. The Gemara later is going to say that even if you cut wood into pieces, it may not be enough, even though you can't put it back together. But you're lacking, and it's still called a piece of wood. The name is also significant. Yeah, acquiring the right, exactly. Yeah. So what are you asking about this? I mean, it's true what you're saying. How does that fit in with this?
That's what I'm asking.
The potential, you're saying the potential profit that could be made for the person, the original owner is losing.
The wood have the potential to be
utensil already. Yeah, that's a lumdisha question. Yeah, Hillel's asking one of these deep questions. When do we say that you look at the potential? Sometimes we say, oh, it has potential to be mixed into this pot, so we consider it mixed already. Remember Reb Zera, anything, if it could be mixed into this, even if you didn't mix it, it was still considered that it was good enough. We say that they're asking if this wood has potential to be this. So why don't we already say that? Those are the philosophical terms. You have to get into each one, like exactly when each of these apply. Rabbi Meal. It's Rabbi Meal's argument. Rabbi Naftali, you familiar with Rabbi Meal? Midas l'cheker halacha. Rabbi Meal.
He only gets one name.
Moshe Avigdor Amiel.
Oh, he wrote a book about this subject, didn't he?
He wrote Midas l'cheker halacha, and in there it's like the logical rules of the Gemara, sort of like like the rules of logic, of Gemara logic. When do we say potential? When do we say this? And each one and he compares Gemaras, and it comes out with like rules of when each one applies.
I remember it's a hard book. That's what I remember.
It's a hard book because he's extracting from the Gemara the logic of it. And you really have to know all the Gemaras that he's playing with. So, okay. Yeah, like the Stein says, buy it in soft cover. It's not so hard. So Tanabra, the Brisa, Shine de Raisa Ktani, Shine de Rabbanan like Ktani. In the Brisa, we're going different. In the Brisa, we're saying a real Shina is we call a real Shina, Shina de Raisa. We call a Shina means to change. Calling a Shina de Raisa, that's the real one. Shina de Rabbanan, Shina de Rabbanan it's not a real change. That's a change that was just that could still revert back to its original state. So the Brisa that says that he took wood and he sanded it, that's the type of change which never goes back. Our Mishnah is telling me the bigger chiddush. The Brisa is telling me less. I'm sorry. So what does the Brisa hold about a Shinai Derabanan? Doesn't say. Probably the Brisa doesn't hold of a Shinai Derabanan. Maybe it holds that that's not considered good enough. Ravashi Amar. Ravashi said that was a biased answer. Ravashi says Tana Didanami Shinai Deraisik Tani. Our Mishnah is also talking about a Shinai Deraisa, a real change where it doesn't revert back to what it was. Eitzim Vasam Kalim. When you've said that you made it into a vessel, you took wood, you made it into a vessel. It's not that you made it into a vessel and then you could just take it apart and then you're back with the original pieces that the person still know. You made it into a vessel. We're talking about a buchani. Buchani is the pestle that's used to that thing that you to grind herbs. It has that bowl with grooves in it. So that piece there's a piece of wood. Sometimes it's marble. Sometimes it's wood. So they have to sand it out. Once you sand it out, you can't. So you took wood, you made it into a vessel, but there's nothing else to do to it other than sanding it. That's all you do. You sand it down, and then that's your vessel. So we're talking about over here, not that there was first you had to sand it, and then you had to make it into a vessel. No, the sanding was to make it into a vessel, and that's how he learns the mission. The Hainu Shifan, that's sanding it. What about the wool, turning it into clothes? There's a lot of steps in making wool. Anyone learned till the Shabbos? You know that there's, I think, 13 types of things over there. It's, setting up the loom and the spinning and the heddles and there's a bunch of things. So that's a big process. It says no. Semavasam Gundam is namtim. We're talking about where he makes felt. Think about the hats. They just take the wool and they just press it, probably with heat, and that's it. So you made it into the very first step of making it into the vessel or the clothing that was done in the very first step. It's not that there were steps along the way that wouldn't be considered a change. No, the very first step already made that change. The Hainushina Dlehada, it doesn't go back. Okay. Now the Gemara says, but would washing it actually be a shina? In the Brisa we said that if he washed it, considered a change in the item, and then he only liban means to bleach, but I don't want to use the word bleach yet because the Gemara is going to make a distinction between bleaching with sulfur, which is going to make let's just call it washing it. Is liban considered a change for a minute? 1 second. We have a Brisa, maybe it's a Mishnah. Lehispik litnei lai ad shetzavei. It's pater. We're talking over here about the wool that's shorn off the animal. That it's called Reishis Agei. Reishis Agei is the first of the wool you have to give to the Kohen. I don't remember how much wool you have to give, but I know how much you have to have. You have to have a month and a half of wool, and then you give say how much the amount is. Give a certain amount of that wool to the Kohen. Now you're supposed to have 5 animals, I think. Oh yeah. What does it say in the
Torah doesn't specify.
Oh, it doesn't specify how much wool.
But the sages, however, decree the one that's give at least 1/60.
1/60th of the total is given to the Kohen. But in order to do this, to be able to have this mitzvah of giving to the Kohen, to be obligated to give to the Kohen, you have to have the right amount before, just like taking challah, you have to have, 43 and something eggs, or 43 eggs or 53 eggs. Challah, 13 is 43 eggs. So over here, it has to be a month and a half of wool. Now, in order to do that, you have to have it all combined. But let's say you had some wool that you already processed, and then you have other wool that now you bring. So it's not considered as combined into the same thing. It's like I made challah yesterday with only 30 eggs. Now, it doesn't mean eggs. It means the size of flour, the amount of flour, the equivalent to eggs of challah. Yeah. The tithing, you don't tithe if you only have 9. Then I don't know. Well, let's say by the animals. Yeah, you see this by the animals. If you only have 9 animals, you don't tithe. So the same thing is with the wool. If you don't have that amount of wool, then you don't tithe. But let's say yesterday I had it, but since then I've already processed that wool from yesterday, and it doesn't combine with the new wool. So it says like this: you didn't have a chance to give it to the Kayan because I guess you didn't have enough. And then you already dyed it. You already put the dye in, so he's pater. He's exempt because it's already processed. It's not part of the same batch of wool. Let's say he washed it and he didn't dye it, and he's going to be chayav. It's considered the same batch. Obviously, it's not washing it is not considered a shinai. Sometimes someone comes in and they say like, "Oh, you have new glasses." Says, "No, I just cleaned them." It looks different. You washed it, but over here we're saying no, it's the same. It's the same thing. Washing it is nothing. Amar Abaya says like kasha. It's not a problem. Reb Shimon Harabanan. So machlokes. If washing, what does washing do? Does washing change it, or does it still stay the same? The Tanya, there was a price that says like this: Gazazu. Let's say they sheared the wool, right? Tavo, that's the basis. Tavo, they spun the wool, spindle. Argo, and then they wove it. Ein mitzdaref. That's already too much. That's not going to combine to tomorrow's wool because this is already processed. Livnai, but let's say it was just washed. Reb Shimon mitzdaref. Reb Shimon says that's already too much. That's already a change. The Chacham say that washing it is not a change. Okay, so there we go. So we have 2 opinions. When you have a contradiction, what is washing it? Is it a change or not? So the way you resolve that contradiction is by saying it's 2 different opinions. The Chachamim say it's not considered a change. Rava says Hava Reb Shimon. Really, we can say that it's both Reb Shimon. And Reb Shimon says that it combines. So how could it both be Reb Shimon if we say that Liban is a change, washing it is considered a change that we saw from the Brisa before Livna pay Misham Chasak Zela. And over here by the Reish Sagez, you see that Liban is not a change. Well, it depends how you washed it. Did you comb it first before you washed it? If you just combed it with your fingers, so then when you wash it, it doesn't really wash out properly. But if you combed it with the comb, then when you wash it, it gets very clean, then that's considered a real change. Yeah. Pia Barovin. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't do that.
Kafifa. Reb Chia bar Ravan Amar. Reb Chia bar Ravan says, "Had the chavri chavurei, had the kavri kavurei." It depends what type of washing we do, what type of bleaching. Are you just washing it to make it clean? Kavri kavuri means making it white. Kavri kavuri means that you used a type of soap in it, which was they used gopherous. Gopherous means sulfur. You use sulfur to would sulfur make it white? It sounds like it would make it yellow. Make it stink. But maybe there was something there that cleaned it, like a stringent type of thing that maybe cleaned it. Okay. What do you have there? Yeah. Old-fashioned soap. Oh, is that the way they say it? That it's washing or boiling? That's the difference? I thought it was just if they added sulfur.
When it's a chemical reaction,
Whitening through combing. This Mishnah refers to washing, whereas the vice refers to boiling and sulfur. Okay. Hashta Yesh Leimar. At this point, some take out the Yesh Leimar. Tseva l'Reb Shimon le'avishinei liban havishinei. Turns out is that Reb Shimon says is that whitening it or washing it is considered a change, but dyeing it is not a change. Exactly what we weren't thinking. Exactly, counterintuitive. The Tanya taught in the Brisa, Gozas Rishon, B'Tzavei Rishon, B'Tzavei Rishon, Va'argoin Mitzdarev. He sheared the wool one at a time, and then each one he dyed it. Each one he spun it. Each one he wove. That doesn't combine to the amount, which was a manna and a half, the weight probably, for all the wool to have to be required to give to the Kohen. Reb Shimon ben Yehuda and Mishum Reb Shimon. Now we're looking over here that Reb Shimon ben Yehuda is saying in the name of Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon is Reb Shimon by Yochai. Reb Shimon before told us that when you whiten it, it doesn't make it. It does. If you whiten it, it makes a change. That was Reb Shimon's view. Now we're looking at Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says tzavai mitzvah. If you dye it, it doesn't make a change. Before we said whitening it was ein mitzvah, which means that it makes the change. Now it is a shinai. Now we're saying that it's not a shinai when you dye it. Amar Abayas says, Leikash, it's not a contradiction between the two opinions of Reb Shimon. Why? Because Harabanan aliva de Reb Shimon, it's a machlekes what Reb Shimon holds. That's how you resolve a contradiction. You say it's machlekes. The Rabbanan say that Reb Shimon holds that a shinoi, that it's considered a shinoi just by whitening it. And Reb Shimon ben Yehuda aliva de Reb Shimon, and this is Reb Shimon ben Yehuda according to Reb Shimon that says that it's mitzdaref, which means that it's not considered a shinoi. Rava says leilam like pliki. Rabban alad Reb Shimon ben Yehuda. There's actually no machlekes over here. You're mixing two things together. There's two ways of resolving contradictions. One is you say it's machlekes. One is you say that the cases are different. So the scenario is different. So Shani Tzeva says we're talking about dyeing. The dye was the type of dye that you can take out through with soap and water, right? Different types of dyes. People dye their hair. Different types. Some comes out and some doesn't come out. Oh yeah, this is where it all started. Yeah, the dyeing clothes. They had this worked out. Anyone watched that? There was like this documentary about the chilazon. Anyone watch that? I don't remember, but there was. They went through different Roman historians. I forget the names of the historians, but they said like Justinian or something, this king. He said no one's allowed to use this certain type of purple because that's on the royal color. They were explaining why the chilazon got lost because it was like reserved only for royalty, and then so the common people couldn't have it. And then anyway, okay, so you see over there were different types of colors. They had all different. So if depends, the dye you can take out through soap, so that's not considered a real shina. And when did we say over there that he didn't give it to him until he dyed it? And over there, and then we say that it doesn't combine because once you already dyed it, then we say that it's a permanent change. That's Vukimna Kedibrakol. We said that everyone holds. So that's the Kala Ilan Layavar. That's a certain type of blue dye that was the fake tchelas that you weren't able to. The difference between tchelas and Kala Ilan was that Kala Ilan was permanent and tchelas wasn't permanent. Certain soaps could take out the tchelas and couldn't take out Kala Ilan. So we're talking about the Kala Ilan. Kala Ilan was the cheap version, the knockoff version, which wasn't made in China. Right?
I told this once, I met somebody like 30 years ago at the airport. He showed me an article about how his dye was the authentic one, and it was printed in like that semi-scientific journal. And he's died when they, what's it called? That's when they the rest, each chemical will burn at the different frequency, whatever. He's actually burned at 613. That was one of the values that is correct.
The only problem with that is that 600, that whatever the color markers are when it burns, that we made up that, but it's still Ashkacha Pratis.
No,
we made
that's
up
not
numbers.
where he got. But I'm just
Okay.
saying he
Right.
felt his was
Right.
true, and then when he did studies, he thought that was
That's very cool. Okay. Omar Abaya. Abaya typically, whenever this happens in the Gemara, it's typically Abaya that does this. He takes a bunch of sages and he puts them all together, and he says they all hold the same thing. Now they're all talking about different things, but the bottom line of all of them is the same. Amar Abaya Reb Shimon ben Yehuda, that we just quoted, according to Reb Shimon, right? What did he say? He said that if you dye something, it's not considered a change. We claim that it was talking about because the dye was removable, but maybe not. According to Rava, maybe not. Beis Shammai, we were about to see. We actually had it before once. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov. Oh, what do you have over here? Chart of the opinions. Ravashi, Rava, and Rav Chia Bar Oven. Okay, good. So, so far we have Shimon ben Yehuda, Beis Shammai, Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, and Rabbi Yishmael. That's 5. Kulas Viralu, all of them hold Shina b'im kaimei, that a Shina doesn't change something. That means a change doesn't change. Just because you changed it, that doesn't mean that you acquired it. It's still the same item. Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda, we said, what does he say? That even if you dye it, it's still the same, right? And you still combines with the other wool to be obligated to give to the Kohen for Reisha Sagez. Beis Shammai Mahi, what is Beis Shammai? This we had before in Meruba, I think. No, in Meruba we had this in the 7th chapter. The Tanya was Nasan Lachitim Bestana Basaselis. See, a person paid a woman, the Esnan, he paid her in wheat. The prostitute, he paid her in wheat. Now that wheat is not supposed to be used as a sacrifice, right? But she took the wheat and she ground it. She made it into flour. Or he paid it with tzesim. He paid with olives, vas and shemen, and she turned it into oil. Anav mas and yayin, took grapes. She made it into wine. So Tani Chada Aser, one brisa says that it's still prohibited to go on the mizbeach. Tani Yidach, the other brisa says mutter, says that now it's permissible to go on the mizbeach. We had these 2 halachas in exchange for a dog or the esna. Remember that? So here, what happens if it's changed? We have two opinions. Amar Rabbi Yosef Tani Gurion de Measpurik. Rabbi Yosef says that Guran Measpurik, which that's the name of a place, he's taught that it's actually a machlokes. Why do we have 2 brises? Because Beis Shammai is Oisrin and Beis Hillel Matirin. It's machlekes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai holds that the change is not considered a change, so it's still considered the same original wheat. And Beis Hillel says, no, it is a change. My time of the Beis Shammai. What's the reason for Beis Shammai to say this? Amar Kra, pasuk says Gam Shneim. Can I look in your Gemara? I just want to see the pasuk. Yeah, it says, don't bring the payment for the zayna or the exchange for the dog to the house of Hashem your God l'chol neder for any vow. Because it's disgusting to Hashem alikecha. Both of these. Gam shneim. Also both. So Beis Shammai says, it says Gam shneim. You know what it says? What that's coming to teach us is l'Rabbi Shinuyayim. It's coming to include, even if it's changed, it still retains its original status. It's prohibited. Beis Hillel Amar. Beis Hillel, what does Beis Hillel do? Amar Kra, he says, the pasuk says, Haim. The pasuk said Haim. Only them. Let me see it again. Where was the Haim in there? It said Shneihem. Is that the Haim? From the Haim? Them. So the Haim is the Shneihem. Beis Shammai, the Haim, the Shinuyayhem would be the object pronoun, right? Beis Shammai Yaksiv Haim. What about Beis Shammai? It says them. Not if they have offspring. In other words, if he gave an exchange for, he gave a sheep in exchange for a dog or something like that, or he paid in a sheep, but that sheep now has an offspring. That offspring is mutter on the mizbeach because it says haim, only them. That's what Beis Shammai does. Beis Hillel use the haim to tell me not if it's changed, it's mutter. Beis Hillel, what does Beis Hillel do to teach me not the offspring? I don't think they need that because if something's changed. But anyway, the Gemara says Tarti Shamet Minay. The same. We can learn both from the Haim. We learn that if it's changed, it's already permissible on the altar, and also the offspring is permissible on the altar. Only them.
I thought when we learned to use the dog, it's the value of it.
No, the exchange of a dog wasn't supposed to be brought on the altar.
Itself,
We don't bring dogs on the
I
altar.
know. So we're talking about the value.
No, we're talking about if someone purchased the dog or sold a dog for an animal, that animal can't be brought on the altar. Yeah, so let's say it was a sheep exchanged for so Bisil Nami Yaksiv Gam.
One at night, but not last night.
They have hot dogs. Bisil Nami Yaksiv Gam. Bisil, it also says also, which means it's coming to include something. The Gemara says Gam leBeis Hillel kasha Gam. According to Beis Hillel, this is one of those things we don't have an answer for. Anyone remember the other thing that we sort of? But there was one other word. Do you remember? Remember? He said Rabbi Yehuda, Shar Rabbi Yehuda, Sel Rabbi Yehuda, and Gam leBeis Hillel is kasha. That's what the Gemara said before. You hold that vessels that fall into maybe chamar. You hold that vessels in the pit. You're going to be chayav. What do you do with the word that tells me that you're potter? He says that's a kasha. Yeah, I think chamar. I thought it was celibate. So 1 second. Let me just go back to that. It's on some famous base.
Person not responsible for the vessel, just the function.
Yeah. 1 second. No, we had it somewhere else. What was earlier? We had like Silabay, Silal, or Chamarla. I don't remember where it was. Yeah. Was it in kindness? Okay. Okay, whatever. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Mahi. We're holding by, we did already Rishon ben Yehuda and Beis Shammai, that a change doesn't doesn't change. That's there. What about Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov? That's the third one. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Aimer, as much as it changes, it stays the same. That's the Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Aimer. He says, if someone stole a saw, which is the size of 144 eggs of wheat, Tachna, he ground it, lasha, he kneaded it, and he baked it. Now he separates challah. All of this was stolen. So, the rule is that you're not allowed to make a bracha on stolen food. How could he say the bracha on this? This is not a blessing. This is a disgrace. And this is what it says in Tehillim. Someone stealing. A robber that says a blessing is a disgrace to Hashem. Which means that even though all these changes were made to the item, but it's still considered the original stolen item. Even though the wheat was ground and all of this, you see, but the change doesn't make a difference. Reb Shimon ben Elazar Mahi. What about Reb Shimon ben Elazar? What does he say? We're up to number 4. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Any improvement that the thief makes, he has the upper hand. If he wants, he could say, I'm keeping the item and I'm paying you what's value. Or he could just hand it back. How is he allowed to hand it back? It must mean that the change, as much as he changed it, it still stays the same. And he can give it back. My kamar, what does this mean to say? Amar Absheish Tachi kamar. Hishpicha, if he improved it, he can take the improvement. Kichesh, if it got worth less, because the change could stays in its same status. So why do we say that he can keep it? And why do we say that he can keep the item? And if the change it doesn't matter and it's still the same thing, you should have to return the original item. Like it says in the pasuk, the person has to return what he stole. My answer is that is because we were trying to help him do tshuva, and he may not put an effort in to change it or the work. He may not want to give that back. So to help him, we give him the option of paying just what it was worth originally, and he can keep the improvements. And that way he'll do tshuva.
Also, so the price goes by back then, or is the current price?
That's a little stuff, right? I think it's you know what? It probably has to do with the price that it is now. Because he didn't really, does it say over here in the notes? I know, but this is a different opinion. This opinion argues in it. Where's the where we're up to, right? Yeah. Take it back, 14. Since the stolen article is to the extent the robber has the right to return the stolen, no, before that. 17. True, the physical change underwent does not affect acquisition, and thus the biblical law. In the biblical, the rabbi is required to return the appreciated animal as is. The rabbis have decreed that the rabbi should take its appreciation. For example, if he stole an animal worth 100 zuz, and he fattened it, so now it's worth 150 zuz, he returns the animal to the owner, and the owner pays the robber 50 zuz. Oh, so he gives the animal back, and he takes the improvement. The rabbis enacted this to the rabbi who might be inclined to repent, not be discouraged from doing so by the prospect of losing the amount. Ramban. Okay. Yeah. So Reb Daniel, he's actually going to give the animal back. He's just going to take the price of the improvement. That fits better with this opinion that the change that he has to return the original item. Now, there's a discussion in those notes, it's like this in the Rishonim. If when he gets the extra, when he gets the improvement, is that because he put in the effort, he fattened it up, and that's why, or is it even an improvement that happened naturally? That's a discussion. Definitely, if he's the one that fattened it up, so then according to this opinion, he takes the improvement. Okay. Rabbi Shmuel Ma'hi, this is the fifth one. The Tanya was started on the Brisa, mitzvah peya lahafresh min hakama, to separate from the standing stalks. Remember in Rus, they would come take, but there was an area that was not cut. The grain was still there. That was left for the poor to come and cut. Lahafresh min hakama. If he didn't separate it from the kama, why he'd probably harvest the whole field. So then, mafresh min haimrim. Okay, so you leave the bundles in the corner, and the poor will take from the bundles. Lahafresh min haimrim. If you didn't separate the bundles, you notice he took all the grain inside. Mafresh min hakri. Then you have to separate from the silo where they store the grain. That's only until the completed process of the grain was when you filled up the silo, then you would smooth off the top before you put the cover on or whatever. If you smooth off the top, then meiser v'naisin, then you have to take meiser. And what happens after the meiser? Does he give the payah after he takes meiser? I think so. Yeah. He takes meiser first because he's already chayiv in meiser. That's the stage where he's chayiv in meiser. Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Amro, in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, they said, Af mafresh minei isa v'naisin light. You can even separate from the dough, which means Rabbi Shmuel holds that nothing is really changing anything here. See, the first opinion held that, look, it's all grain. It happens to be attached to the ground, but the grain is still the grain. And as you move on, even when it's in the silo, it's still grain. But when you turn it into dough, then you've already ground it and mixed water, and now it turns into a different substance. So according to Rabbi Shmuel, no, it didn't. It's as much as it changes, it stays the same. Amalei Rav Papa la Abaya. Papa says to Abaya, Ichbol kolani tanoi lashminan kebeshamai. All of these sages went out of their way to just passing like Beishamai that says that it changed doesn't really change anything. Amalei hachi kamri. No, you got it wrong. Beishamai and Basil never argued about this. That's what they held. Amar Rava. Let me just see if I can do this. No, let's leave Rava for tomorrow. Okay. We'll leave it over here.
So the word omer means a bundle. That's what the omer.
Yeah.
When you're counting the omer, you're counting the bundles.
Yeah, it was a carbon aimer, but why was it called an aimer? Yeah. How much was a Hillel's saying that also it was a measurement, it was an aimer, right?
Interesting.
That could mean that aimer was the measurement.
It's interesting, right? Because that's what we're working on our midot, which are measurements also right now.
Right. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Separations of transfer of man to woman.
You want to know if that's a change?
Is it reversible?
I don't know. Is it reversible?
I don't think so.
Why? If they can do it. No, if they can do it either way, then why can't it be reversible?
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good day.
Because they're moving more.